Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Industry Night panel. Tonight, we're talking about monetizing esports, revenue streams, partnerships, and sponsorships. Joined with me today is the general manager of Dignitas. We have Jonathan McDaniel.
Hello.
Jonathan.
Happy to be here.
And our other panelist is none other than Blue Otter League and I guess the Blue Otter organization owner, the Bully. Hello, the Bully. Wait, why did I don't know why I put the in front of that, like that's your first name. First name the, last name Bully. How are you both doing
That's what
today?
I tell people. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. So can I just get you both to give us a little bit of a background about you guys? Starting with Jonathan, can you just give us a little bit of your background in the industry and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so I kind of started more on the competitive, like analyst coaching kind of side of things, and then eventually, after about like a year or so of that, realized I should probably hop into the management side, really start to flesh out the skill set. And so I worked at orgs from C9, Golden Guardian, CLG, NRG, kind of all sorts of different flavors of management with across all the different teams, and got a lot of experience working with partnerships, socials, marketing, all the different elements of kind of the business side too. So I've worn many hats across a pretty long and semi tumultuous career in esports. So happy to be here and talk about everyone's favorite thing of how we make money to make it all work.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and get the same from Bully. Bully, what's your experience in the
Yeah, I mean,
esports area?
we started out as a grassroots like tournament organization, so we started out with like just the gold ranked league, so basically only gold players were allowed, and we slowly built it up to having ranks all the way up from like as low as you can go to master 600 LP, so a big portion of the player base can participate in our leagues, and then randomly I guess we lucked into it or just random by chance happened that we promoted into the NACL. And so that's how we started building out the organization side where we host teams. So we started with NACL, obviously still have him. Went to like CS for a little bit. We went to Valorant, especially in a lot of the game changer scenes. So we do game changers for Valor, and then we also had a couple teams in EMEA for game changers when they hosted the equal EEC. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Blue Otter. I've been watching you guys since want to say when I first got into casting. You guys were one of the first leagues I've cast for, and I've watched you guys grow from like small league. Well, I guess not. You guys have always been big three for a while now, but like you guys went from like just a league org to much bigger now.
Mhm.
That's gotta be a big jump from managing like just a league of legends org to like a general gaming organization.
Yeah, it's definitely rough, especially because how much time you have to like kind of soak into it. People don't know, just like running tournaments, you always have the issues of one, um, players can cheat or try to cheat. You always have that kind of responsibility to try to mitigate any kind of risk around smurfing, cheating, or whatever they try to do. You want to give like the player base a good experience, and if a new player comes in the scene and they just have a bad experience, they might never play in leagues again. Um, but we want to try to get a majority of the population actually don't know about these leagues. So any new player that comes in, we want to give them a good experience so they kind of stick around. We want the game to like survive. Even if we don't make a lot of money from it, we have a strong passion of giving these teams and players a less toxic environment than just normal solo queue.
That's definitely the case with amateur. Before we start getting into a lot of the questions regarding monetization, just out of curiosity, what are your two favorite, like both of you guys, what are your favorite games to play when you're not like in a competitive mood? What's your like go-to game when you just want to have a nice chill night away from all of the esports and all of that?
It's tough. I think if we're talking single player, probably Baldur's Gate. If we're talking multiplayer, just like ARAM Mayhems and League is just it's become like the new fun, just brain off game for me. It's a good time.
What about you, Bully?
Yeah, Mayhem, Arena, TFT, Rocket League. Like
Ooh,
that's pretty
ooh,
much
we
what I
got
stick to.
Rocket League in there too. I tried going on Rocket League the other day, and it was a nightmare. I
It's
did
hard. That
not.
game's too hard, man.
I
You
remember when that game first started out as well. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and start getting into the monetization of esports. We got a bunch of questions for you guys that people are curious about when it comes to monetizing your esports league or monetizing yourself as a player, which I mean, like you said, Jonathan, you've started as a player, so you might be able to help us with some of those questions as well. And I think we might start on like a player level, then move to a team level, and then move to like an organizer level with like stuff like Blue Otter League and all of that. So like we had a lot of people who are watching these streams and they're either on the player or they're on the production side, on the casting side, stuff like that. How would you go about as like a competitive player in league? What do you think are some of the best avenues for monetizing yourself as a player? What's important for like trying to get yourself out there and making money as like an individual in the esports realm?
Yeah, I would say it's really tricky. It definitely is one of those like you have to try knowing that it's not going to work 90% of the time. Like you just need to be like streaming on socials, especially like, Instagram Reels, TikTok, like the vertical content platforms. And you need to just be putting out content, fully acknowledging it's probably never going to get seen, and figure out what works for your brand until eventually the kind of like hook of the algorithm catches your content and starts to pull you up, and then from there you kind of get the directive of I should do more of whatever just worked.
Bully, you've seen a lot of players go through Blue Otter League. Has there been, and also your rosters, have there been any that like have ever had a good method of making money for themselves so they can do competitive full time?
So, in general, the biggest issue that players have, even if they could be the greatest player in the world, is that they don't build a brand at all.
Hmm.
And that can just be simple as posting a few of your clips, especially short form content, because people eat those up. And more you build your brand, more followers you have, the more marketable you are for potential sponsors. So you're going to get these brand deals, like even if it's a couple hundred, you're going to slowly build it up. People don't want to put in the work. They grind. What's crazy is because they grind league like 16 hours a day, but if they cut their league time just a little bit, or streamed a good portion of that, they could potentially make money even if they're not the best player. If they have a good personality, um, they consistently stream at a good schedule. A lot of big problem is like a lot of players don't. They stream, but they stream like odd hours. They don't have a strict schedule, so people don't know when they're online. So there has to be some habits that you have to set in stone to make yourself uh, easier to view, easier to like socialize with, and you got to just put in the work.
I guess with that being said, we're talking about like the content creation like rabbit hole for the individual. Jonathan, me and you were kind of talking about this a bit before stream, but how important do you think it is for people inside the organization who aren't players to build a brand for themselves? Like you as a general manager, for example.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely something that I didn't do a good job of before I was in the general manager role. So like by the time I was named general manager at CLG, everyone was like, "Who?" So it very much is like an important thing because once you become a GM, you're going to be on camera more. There's going to be more scrutiny on you. They might ask you for quotes for media. You might actually have interviews yourself. You'll be more front and center in content pieces. So having some initial background to lean on and some other things to kind of like boost after the fact. So like, if I had a recurring stream to talk about stuff, then it could maybe help the teams that I'm working for at the time. And all of it kind of just pollinates the same kind of group of trees and plants and stuff all in the ecosystem and helps it all grow. So it's something that I definitely want to be doing more and I'm definitely aspiring to work more actively on. But it's something where like, man, if I had just been doing that the whole time, this whole thing would have been much simpler and it would have been much easier for me.
I think that's a good answer. I guess with both of you guys being managers and owners of organizations as well, you can kind of speak to it from like when you guys are picking individuals up and whatnot. How much of it do you guys look for in what their brand is? Like obviously skills are going to be a big part, but how important is it for like the players on a brand level when you go to pick them up and being able to like sell like merchandise or like get more views on your streams and matches because of the players? How important would you say that is to you when you're signing players to your teams?
Yeah, I'll let Bully go first, but it's tough.
Yeah. So for us, for development side, uh, it doesn't matter because we're gonna try to develop them into a person that can. So big thing I told Kryra when he was um, at the end of the season, I told him that he should start building his brand, streaming more, trying to get himself more well known because it makes it easier to pick him up. If he's not on socials, like there's a big reason why people just keep posting let's say like a football player, right? They post a lot of their clips of their or highlights of their games, so potential scouts can see them. That's it's very similar in this situation. If you're seen maybe even by just a random manager, they might be like, oh, we should actually take a look at this player, and who knows, maybe they get a chance in tier one. So our goal is to help build the brands of those players for getting them into tier one. it doesn't matter if they have a brand at that time. It'd be cool if they did, but it does not affect their situation if we pick them up or not.
Yeah, and it's kind of a similar struggle for tier one, where it would be nice if everyone had, this super awesome brand and streamed actively and had a ton of followers. But at the end of the day, like you are kind of incentivized to always be competitive, which then kind of gives you this catch 22 where would you like to build the team that has, indexed more towards the brand side, or do you want to kind of shore up your chances of being successful? But at the same time, success is never guaranteed. You could do everything in your power to make the most successful roster, and it may just not work out, right? So it's one of those things where there's been teams that have kind of taken the like kind of nihilistic approach and just said, screw it, let's sign like 5 influencers. And, in teams like Los Ratones, they kind of made that work because so many of them were former pro players that were then building their brands after their kind of pro career was struggling. They were able to kind of put something together that was super compelling and amazing. But every other project that's looked like that in the past historically really hasn't done well from a competitive standpoint and hasn't been long enough in terms of the kind of longevity of the product to where they actually get anything out of it. And then kind of all the pieces then break off and just go back to being independent content creators. So I would say it's one of those things where we'd love to be able to break ties with like someone who's willing to go on camera and have like a brand and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like because so much of the products are just competitive leagues, you can't really sacrifice that as much as it could potentially be good for your team on the other side.
Yeah, you could probably compare that with like near airport when they played
Yeah,
in
exactly.
tier two. Is like they thought that they could just use their branding that they have on their streams to bring them hundreds of fans, thousands of fans, and immediately become like basically on the level of LR. But they didn't put in that work, and they basically uh, treated NACL as like on the back burner. That's like the last thing. I think one time Double Lift did play in like a COD tournament for a sponsor, so it kind of killed that mood and was nowhere near the success of LR.
All right, all right. I think that makes a lot of sense because, like, I feel like that very much has been one of the difficulties of esports, especially on a monetization level, of like keeping things competitive while still trying to bring in money for your team and also keep eyes on your team as well. When you guys are like working with your team to try and like bring in sponsorships or different revenue new streams, where do you really look in like both tier one, tier two? Where are you guys looking to be able to get funding for your teams?
Yeah, I think on the kind of tier one, it's a very different beast because there's so much more visibility on the product in general. There's also like the longevity of like the league for at least LCS has been running for so long. There's been, Counter-Strike majors and even like, like Dream Hacks and stuff like that have been going on for so long that it's easy to go and explain what the product is, show multiple years of it existing and say, hey, it's been like this for a long time. Here's the metrics, here's the numbers, here's what we're offering, and find some capacity with like a deal that's, a reasonable value add, but also is something that's like you're pitching this to a brand that's like adjacent, right? They're maybe like a food delivery company, they are like a meal prep company, they're a VPN, whatever the case may be. They're a product that the average person that watches your games is going to be probably engaging with and can then be like more of a targeted ad for those people. Whereas in tier two, I'm sure the bully can speak to it. It's a very different beast.
Yeah, it's there's a couple problems with tier two of kind of getting monetization. One, you're looking at a league that uh, doesn't have a lot of viewers. So when someone comes in and it's like, why should we kind of sponsor that kind of league? Where one, you're sponsoring a team, not the league. So when the league doesn't have that many viewers, the team looks less attractive. Uh, s- so what our idea is trying to build out not only from just teams perspective and just giving them like basic value of we'll put you on our jerseys or whatever. We're trying to do some more live events as well. One of the big things that we did was having a booth at LTA finals last year. And one, it a live event is more attractive to potential sponsors. And two, it does help build our brand as a organization, so it's kind of hits both angles, and we could use that booth, all the pictures, all the information we did with it in our pitch deck to potential sponsors, and it kind of boosts up what we have to offer a lot more.
So you guys are pitching your teams to sponsors. How do you guys go about finding sponsors? Is it the idea of just like, oh, we think this like brand smaller, we might just like reach out to them, or is there like a list you guys go from? Where are you guys going about finding sponsorships for your teams?
Yeah, I would say it's a bit of a mixture. I'm sure there's every partnership, job in the world is going to have some element of cold call. Like you're just going to reach out to people and hope that that's the email they click on and click reply to. But I think a lot of it does come down to networking. So folks that you've worked with in the past, marketing managers or partnership directors or managers that you've worked with on other teams or other companies that have now moved somewhere else, where you can kind of like rebuild the bridge, see if it makes sense, and kind of go back to what worked, even if it's a completely different brand they may be working with. And a lot of it does tend to kind of go that way. And then sometimes it just takes being creative, right? Like if there's a company that is like a super unique fit, like I know the LEC has partnered with KitKat for a really long time, and it kind of sponsored their ad breaks or their pause breaks or tech breaks, whatever the case may be. And it's like, oh, that's a really unique branding opportunity. It kind of makes sense. There's a catchy slogan or bit of lingo to go with it. Cool, that makes sense. You can go and bring that to KitKat as like a more intentional pitch idea and maybe get them excited about it. Whereas a lot of the more generic like, hey, you guys make keyboards, we are pro gamers. That kind of makes sense. Would you like to give us money? It sometimes it works, right? But at the same time, it's much less exciting than a more like novel pitch idea.
Yeah, I think uh, cold calling is going to be the main source. The worst thing they could say is no, or actually just not reply to you. So it never hurts to ask. You should always ask 100%. And there's sometimes if you're able to do enough research, there's a lot of these companies that have specific budgets set aside to for esports and like inclusive esports tournaments and teams.
Mhm.
So if you're able to kind of nail down that side when you're pitching it to those sponsors, you might have a better chance of receiving sponsorships or at least getting a meeting. One of our one of when we first promoted to NACL, we had no brand, but we were able to get under the table with a multi-billion-dollar company, and they were extremely close of actually sponsoring us when we just had an NACL team. And the way that we got that meeting is because we knew somebody that had their contact. They work under them, and they were able to pitch it for us. And so that kind of insider um, helped us get to the table without going through emails, cold calling, whatever. It's always nice to know somebody that could get you on the table first before cold calling, because that raises your chance of securing that sponsorship a lot higher. And lastly, a big thing is when companies do their budgeting, they typically finish their budget in like November or even October for the next year. So when you're reaching out to sponsors, you can try to get them at the end of the year where they're about the budget. And if they have any budget left over for that year, they might just give it to you in one go because they want to use their entire budget. Otherwise, they might get cut from their budget for the next year. So they want to
Mhm.
use all of their marketing budget.
That honestly, I think that's a really good piece of advice with that not a lot of people know of, like going in at the end of the year to make sure because yeah, a lot of companies are going to have that little bit left over that they don't want slashed. And I think that's if anyone's trying to like find sponsorships out there for like a small team or something, probably a really good rabbit hole to go down. Speaking of smaller teams, you both have been in the esports game for a while. You've both like you've gone from player to general managing a company like Dignitas. Blue Water started as small gold leagues. When you guys were first starting out, did you guys look for revenue opportunities? And if so, what were like some of the bigger ones for like the smaller game opportunities or like smaller um like when you guys were smaller in esports?
I would say the beginning is always hard because you're always playing second fiddle to the people above you, right? Like I think with Blue Water being in the tier two of a league that exists above them, they're kind of always going to be looking at the smaller scale things. But I think the biggest advantage to that has always been like the value of a baseline partnership of like, hey, we mention you in social posts or make videos or put you on the jersey, whatever the case may be, because you're in a smaller space, the value of those monetarily is lower. So you can attract certain brands that might actually be more in that budget space. Like you're not going to go to like a Coca-Cola or something and be like, hey, would you like to sponsor this tier two team? It won't cost you that much because for them, like the conversion rate of the money just doesn't make sense for them. And they're like, we're just going to go spend that plus a lot more on a more, an endeavor that makes more sense for our scope. Whereas like you might be able to go and get the kinds of companies that would work with like an individual like YouTuber or someone that works with like referral links or just is like a smaller startup and wants to go wide with their influencer plan. You might be able to attract one of those, and I think that is usually the kind of angle that a lot of smaller orgs or even individual like players in certain games actually use, especially if they're active on streams and can actually get some engagement with their audience.
Bully, do you have any words of wisdom for any startups or like anything you did in your experience?
Yeah. Um, basically, Jonathan hit the nail on the hammer. Um, or the other way around. But it's it's the unfortunate part for us is, yeah, if they somehow get interested, they might look more deep into it and be like, wait a minute, why are sponsor Blue Water when we could sponsor Dignitas? And it's instead of paying this much, we just up it a little bit and well, quite a bit of, and probably have a lot more interactions and impressions. So a big thing that we did, especially because we have the TO side, is that we utilize that. Look, this is how many players play in our league every year, every split, and this is how many teams. This is how much we stream. It's only going to cost you this much, and
Mhm.
they get pretty attracted to that aspect. Actually, the biggest things that we get, um, I guess, attracted for is our tournament. It's not our teams, and it's just because it has a lot more visibility and power in terms of marketability. So we try to put them together, and that's why we continue hosting leagues because that is a way to potentially secure sponsors for the team side of Blue Water.
I do want to get into as well the tournament sponsorships, and I will do that in a second. I'm just curious because we've talked a lot about partnerships, we've talked a lot about sponsorships, we've talked about marketing on things like social media. Is there any other forms of revenue you guys might have like found any like secret third ways? Like I know like in something like a theater world, there's grant money inside of it and like applying for like stuff like that. Is there any other like miscellaneous venues of revenues you guys ever look for?
Yeah, I think generally it's pretty hard. I think the one well that people always go back to because it just makes sense is merch. But I think genuinely merch is a really difficult business to succeed in because the thing that makes merch work usually is scale, and you're not going to get the level of scale necessary to be like, let's print off 1,000+ units of something and then sell them. And because we made 1,000 of them, the margins are pretty nice on them. Instead, it's like, we're gonna put it up on a store. We're gonna hope to sell 100, and if we don't, we're stuck with stock. So that's usually the well that runs dry pretty quick. And I think it comes down to what the bully and other similar folks are doing, where it's like find an ancillary business that's like similar enough to make sense for what you're doing. So it's tournament operation, event production, or maybe there's like a website that hosts guides and does ad revenue for a lot of their income. And that's usually the kind of like I hate to use the word, but synergy between the two things that you want to pull together to then actually have it make sense on the money side, because that is something that is an easier thing to monetize than just putting a brand on a jersey or tweeting about a certain company, or if you're lucky, being on site and being able to like make a branded video content piece about a specific brand or something you're doing.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Bully, is there anything you want to speak towards that?
Yeah, on the side of merch, that's definitely what people fall back to. And for us specifically, it's easy and hard to sell merch because Blue Water is still very niche. It's not very well known. So our goal is to keep trying to go to live events, because even though we were lesser known, we're at LTA finals, people still buy our merch there. I think we sold $3,000 worth of merch. Um, and we bought inventory. So we have leftover inventory that we can use next time. And our margins will be decent enough to actually make a good profit. So um, online merch sales kind of are issues because either you have to keep plugging in your merch, your site, whatever. Live merch sales are extremely easy. So if there are more opportunities that we could go to live events, is we're definitely gonna try to take that.
Yeah. I want to ask you a couple questions on the tournament side, and I don't know, Jonathan, if you know much about hosting tournaments, but I know Bully runs the Blue Water League, and out of curiosity, because like there's obviously buy-in fees to a lot of amateur leagues. is the buy-in fee like an actual revenue stream for like upkeep of the league, or what are you looking for when you're like, hey, we need a reason to do this league, we need monetary value of this league? You spoke a bit about how sponsorships find that attractive. Maybe you can speak a little more about how you make something like a league look attractive, or if there's um any other purposes for running a league that help you with the monetary streams.
Yeah, so a big thing, yeah, entry fees do cover, but a lot of that goes to the production and prize pool of the league. So we might end up possibly breaking even in terms of all those costs versus the entry fee. Um, a big thing is we do get a decent amount of revenue from server subscriptions. And that's just added bonus. People who want to support the league or organizations that are committed to playing, they could get a discount for future entry fees, things like that. For it's like a $30 subscription every month. So building that up, and you're able to pretty much make a small profit every split you run, and eventually it's gonna be easy to scale. uh, and why sponsors like the league. One of the sponsors we had was like a Blitz app, Pro Comps, and what Pro Comps was is pretty much it was like a tool for players and teams to kind of build out what kind of team comps they want to run. So it was actually very, very specific to like League of Legends. And since we had a league where we had gold players, platinum players, etc., it's attractive for them to try to get them to play or use pro comps. And that's why they sponsored us for a few $100s every month for like a year. So even though it's something like a little bit, it's still something. It's not a lot of deliverables that we had to do, um, but it helps their company out. I think they had ended up like having 180,000 downloads at the end, so it helps them kind of scale their business by having that small market uh, budget of going to Blue Otter. So we help them get some players to use it, and then they're able to use that data to make their site better.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a solid partnership. I remember your partnership with Procomps. I remember doing I think you guys had the little thing in the corner with the Procomps where it was like
Yeah.
flashing while the games were going on. With Blue Otter as well. Do you guys only have League of Legends leagues right now, or do you also have leagues going to other games?
Only in League of Legends for now. Because right now it's it's difficult for us to go into other games with how much time we have on hand.
Hmm.
We are planning a Game Changers tournament, talking to a bunch of teams, sponsors, whatever, um, which is taking up a significant time because we have random meetings every so often with potential teams that want to participate or sponsors that might want to, help out, whether it's like a venue or a plan to have them play in the league. So I don't think for the foreseeable future we would go into different games is because we want to keep capitalizing on this League of Legends market instead of
Hmm.
trying to build out a new market.
That that makes sense. Jonathan, now you general manage Dignitas, specifically the League of Legends team. However, I'm curious, how important do you think it is as an organization to go into other games? Do you think it matters if you're just like a one game org or something like Dignitas where you have like Pokemon Unite, Fortnite, League of Legends, Rocket League? Do you think that helps with branding and money, or do you think it's better if you're just like a one game organization, or it doesn't make a difference?
Yeah, I think if you're like the best, if you're like TSM circa like, 2014 where you're like the king of the castle and you could run League forever and just be fine with that. But obviously you want to capitalize on your broader like fandom as an organization and grow and expand. I think for teams that are like on the come up and want to like validate potentially more spend or just kind of expansion in general, the question you have to ask is like with each expansion is like what is the kind of value add here, right? Am I giving like more fun games for my fans to watch to try and like galvanize excitement for the brand in general, or do I have a unique opportunity to pick up like a great like team to then add to our organization to bring new fans in? I think the bigger thing it does on the finance side in general is just inventory, right? If you just have League of Legends, you only have as many games of League of Legends as your team plays in a year to really say like, hey, here's us wearing the jersey doing the thing. Whereas if you have, 3, 4, 5 other games, then you can say, well, on this weekend we have, League, and this one we have Fortnite, this one we have League and Fortnite, and then Pokemon's the next week, and then there's always something in the calendar. You're getting a lot more kind of organic conversations going on, and it's a lot more kind of like ingest points for fans to become fans. But I will say it is one of those things where you really do have to ask the question each time you expand to make sure you're not overextending, because there's been plenty of orgs where like they've jumped into like 10 to 15 games, and then just as fast as they jump in, they'll pull the plug on the product, and all of a sudden that kind of doesn't look good after you do it a few times and make that mistake of kind of foolhardy overexpansion. So you have to really be kind of cognizant of what you're doing and try your best to not have to kind of claw back your investment into a space.
Bully, how would you say that applies to tier two now that you guys have your Valorant partnership? Do you find expanding on like a team level has been helpful?
Yeah, we definitely look for new opportunities with other teams. It's all going back to branding. Is if we just had League of Legends, we wouldn't be able to expand our brand or be have potential sponsors or partnerships with like Sentinels. On top of that, it does help with revenue because we do get a cut of merch sales from the merch that is going to be dropping from Sentinels for the Sen Otters kind of partnership. So we don't have to do anything for that, and we get a percentage of the profits. So that incoming money will help a lot just for the organization, so we just don't keep bleeding money.
All right. With you were just speaking a little bit as well about like branding and whatnot. When it comes to your guys' organizations, we talked on the player level about making content there and why that's important. When it comes to the organizational levels and making content for your org and for your team, what do you look for when you're looking to make any branding content as an organization?
Yeah, I'll jump into this one, especially because on the league side, we have a lot more kind of opportunities to do stuff in person with the players, and kind of opens our options quite a bit. I will say this is like a blessing and a curse because making content's hard as it is. Obviously, if you are a group that already has like a passionate fan base and community that's just looking for like a window to look through into what your team's up to, then it's a much easier prospect. But if you're a team that's trying to like make a name for yourselves and kind of stick out amongst a crowd of more popular groups, it can be really tricky to find something that's resonant and does well, agnostic of whether there's an ad placement on it. And the second, you then have to have the question of like, how are we going to integrate the ad? How is it going to make sense? What partner makes sense to doing this? That's when it becomes even more tricky to try and navigate, to be like, we need to make something that the brand's going to like to put their name on, that the fan will enjoy watching, and more importantly, the fan won't reject it because it's advertisement, right? That's the like three kind of points that you have to try and hit, and it's difficult to find the balance. But I think in general, like, I don't want to say use YouTube's like slop, but like do stuff that works, right? Like stick to a formula that will do well with engagement, will do well with your fans, and be resonant. But like you got to make sure you convey that to your partner adequately, because there's been plenty of times where I've been on organizations where we have like a more corporate kind of sponsorship with a larger company, and their marketing executives get an idea of like what would be cool and would make sense and all this stuff, and then the second our content team hears it, they're like, full head and hands, like, oh my God, how am I going to make this not cringe? Like, this is going to be terrible. So I think being as involved as you can early in the process, integrate it like from the beginning and from the initial like ideation phases, is one of the more like important first steps to actually make it successful, because I've seen it go wrong a lot of times.
Bully, do you have any comments you would like to make on that?
I don't think I have anything additional.
Totally fair. Um, totally fair. When it you were speaking a lot about like uh um corporate coming in and like branding stuff, and then there's obviously a lot of differences between like startup when you're at the level you're at and trying to find, especially under a corporate, what's gonna work for them, what's gonna work for a sponsorship, wow, what's gonna work for actually getting views, because lots of times those things don't always mesh. Is there any mistakes that you guys have noticed when it comes to monetizing an organization that people like if there was any like short tips of like you knew someone getting in and you were like, do not do these things, what would those things be? What are like the hard no's of monetization when it comes to monetizing a team or monetizing an organization?
Hmm. I'll let the bully dive into this one, but I do think it's hard to think of anything that's like an immediate like don't even try this outside of the obvious like things that don't like just will not work from like the numbers don't make sense.
Hmm.
I think a big thing is like don't sell yourself short. Y- you should be able to put a good value on your organization based on what you know, and you shouldn't try to kind of compromise to a very low level where you are putting in more work for the deliverables than the sponsorship is worth. Because if they're getting you for cheap, then there's a chance that one, the contract might not allow other sponsors. Um, and if you have that, then you're kind of screwing yourself over for a year or however long it is. And also, if you have a what's it called, basically, there's a word for it. I can't think of it, but basically one sponsor that basically you can only have that one sponsor. It's in their deal. Um, things like that can also kind of hinder you from actually monetizing your work effectively.
Yeah, I've definitely. I think I can speak a little bit to some examples of that. Where in the past, there's been a lot of hardware categories where like they demand exclusivity of like all hardware. So like keyboard, mouse pad, headset, and then all of a sudden you'll have like, an Audio Technica or like a Sennheiser come by and they're like, we only want to sponsor headsets, but we're like a much higher quality product, and that's like our goal. And now you have to look at your deal with like a smaller kind of hardware company and be like, is it worth us blocking up 4 categories for X dollars when we could have Y dollars and only block 1 category? And so I think that's to the previous point from the bully, like that's the question you always have to ask yourself when you sell a partnership, right? Of what will this prevent me from selling in the future? Because that can become a problem, but sometimes like in esports, you just take what you can get and hope that you could make it work. So it's always like a you never know what's around the corner. So you sometimes just have to take the one in the hand instead of aiming for the two in the bush.
Yeah,
This is 100%.
it's like
Oh, go
a
ahead.
we'd have a sponsor that wanted to be an exclusive sponsor, um, but the value of being an exclusive sponsor just makes the number jump up quite heavily because you are going to basically lock up any other potential deals in the future, and they will have a lot of say in what kind of partnerships you do have. So let's say the regular sponsor would be, let's throw out a number, 5K a month. Exclusive sponsor can be like 15 or 20K a month, just because that's what's going to have to like that has to make it worth it.
Yeah. The value of exclusivity in the deal. I wanted to ask because we were kind of touching on this. Jonathan, when it comes to some of the sponsorships, you guys use their products on stage a lot, right? Like
It
does that
it
tend to be a
depends.
thing or
So it's changed a lot. So when I was first starting off in like the 2016 to 2018 time period, it was very much the case that like a sponsorship meant you had to use the product. But
Mhm.
it kind of came with pluses and minuses where like sometimes that would mean, the brand would get big visibility, right? Like let's say, you're like a Logitech in the old days and you sponsor a team, and every time they do like a stage shot at LCS when it's like, the numbers are crazy, everyone's watching and they just see a row of just all Logitech all the way down. I'm sure that does great. The problem would come if a player was ever unhappy with the gear. That's when you would actually start getting problems where, if on a stream a player said they don't like it, or if you noticed on their home setup there was like a picture and in the background you saw it wasn't the right thing, you can kind of have all of this like these problems downstream that start to happen. And so what's I think happened historically over the last like, half decade to a decade is sponsors have kind of moved towards being kind of more choosy with when they want to have exclusive use clauses and stuff like that, where maybe a company makes really good quality keyboards, but they're like, hey, we know our mice are not great and they're not like a robust offering. So like, we're not going to make you use the mice, but we will make you use the keyboards. Some teams might be more willing to sign a deal like that. Whereas, if you're a company that makes a bit of everything and really wants to lock it in, you'll have to pay a pretty penny to actually push players nowadays to use your peripherals because it is such a big competitive kind of marketplace. I like the amount of pro players even at like the LCS studio back in the days that would show up with just kind of whatever versus now when everyone's showing up with like artisanal mouse pads and keyboards and like mice. Like the amount of money that goes into hardware nowadays is just so big that I don't think anyone really wants to lock that category down unless there's a really massive value add for them on the financial side.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going with that. I was like, because you imagine that it would be a hard deal to strike to be able to convince your players, hey, you're gonna switch your computer setup because we want money from this sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't say anything bad, even if it's affecting your gameplay.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. It's like telling a baseball player that they have to use a certain bat, and they'd be like, "I don't like this," and they just like 1 year they sign this deal, they use a certain bat, they do a lot worse. It's just gonna hurt them over time.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
also one of those things where no matter how like real or fake the performance changes are, it feels real in the moment to have to make a different like decision, right? So I think at the end of the day, that's ultimately what's going to feel bad for players. So I think the brands have become a lot more savvy of like, hey, we don't want to like shortchange ourselves, the business we're working with, the players, or any of that kind of stuff by trying to kind of overextend. Like I know historically when I was on C9, we were with kind of Logitech for a while, and then we signed a deal with HyperX, and even just like the effort it took to be like take every Logitech keyboard out of the house or put into storage to then pull out a bunch of new HyperX products to make sure that like, hey, if we're filming anything in the house, like there needs to be HyperX at all the desks, you know? That like that takes time, that takes effort, and then it also creates an issue where it's like over time, if you cycle through a lot of these deals, you're just gonna have like a graveyard of hardware, which like you progressively can never use in the future if you keep signing these kinds of deals.
Hey, you should send me
yeah.
those keyboards.
I'm sure they're long since reappropriated to or donated or something. Because
Just start gifting them.
every team, especially the LCS, has had like a graveyard of old gear that has either been accumulated, donated, destroyed, whatever. It's been crazy.
Speaking of like these styles of partnerships, how would one turn a partnership from like a one-time deal to a long-term deal? How do you guys go about trying to make it so that you have sponsorships that last a while, or is that something you don't enjoy doing?
It is the holy grail if you can get an extension on any sponsorship. I think it really shows that like you did what they wanted and they wanted to do it. They want to do it again now, right? I think that's like the ultimate like you did everything right, and it's I don't want to call it rare because I think it's not necessarily rare because esports is esports. It's more rare because just the nature of businesses that are looking for marketing spend. Sometimes, to the bully's point from earlier, like it's hey, it's November, December. I got a few grand left in the marketing bucket and I need to spend it. Otherwise, my boss won't let me have that money next year. And I don't want to have, like a kind of hamstrung budget for the next year. So they spend it. Extending that person a year is probably not going to happen because you were like a one-off thing. Whereas if you can extend, a like peripheral partner that was there for a year, that's like, okay, cool. This is a category that makes sense. We know that we can get this every year. And so now that we've got security knowing that it's built in, we can then do it again. But it's really hard to do. Like I think every sponsor is going to have a rotating cast of like potential marketing executives and employees. They're going to have different partnership managers. It's all going to change over time. And sometimes someone might show up and be like, "We need to scrap everything my predecessor did because they were my predecessor, and I need to like make a name for myself." And then all of a sudden, your like 2 to 4 year deal that you've had with this company is just gone because everyone that made the decision no longer is there anymore, even if it was great. So it's one of those things where like you always want to go for renewals. You always want to bring brands value so that when they come back, to the bargaining table, that they're excited to just click extend and make it easy for everyone. And it also just is nice, reliable financing that really helps organizations kind of build out more stable operations across the board.
Yeah, it's
Bully,
to that
I was gonna
point.
say,
It's
coming
like
from a smaller.
it'd be great for renewals. The problem with market or marketing just in general, when they sponsor, let's say an org or whatever, they have that contract in place because they're basically trying to get in that timeline their entire consumer base of that organization. So after that contract ends, it's like what new value will that organization add? Like we got their fans to, look at the product or whatever. Unless that organization built like another million fans, like during the duration, um, it's almost less worth it for them to renew. So if you do get that renewal, it means that it's working pretty well and they still value it. Um, if you don't, it's because they might just go to a new brand or new way of using that money to gain more consumers or customers in the future because they already tapped that market of esports.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna say from like the smaller organization perspective, how do you go about either both like marketing yourself to be kept longer and like for both of you, how do you look at specific pricing? As you said to value yourself high, like make sure you value yourself high as an organization. How do you go about pricing yourself generally? Like, are there any guidelines you guys follow when it comes to pricing yourself? Or are there any guidelines you think should be followed as like a standard for when you go to a company? It's like, hey, this is the price we would like you to give us.
Yeah, it's hard. I think for a lot of teams, there's no clear formula for everything. I think it really is case by case. Back in the old days, I think there was a very clear like, hey, here's our rate card. Here's, if we do X, of whatever transaction or, whether it's like we did a tweet, we got this many impressions, here's the rate card. I think nowadays it needs to be like a meet people where they're at. And to the bully's point from before, like let's say you're talking about a company that wants to do conversions on a sale, right? Like downloads of a mobile game app or purchases of like a subscription service. At a certain point, if you capture all 100% of the people you could capture, or have at least gotten them to use the service once, the value prop for you as a company drops dramatically. So you need to find new ways to be like, hey, here's a way to get a new audience. Here's a way to do another thing, as opposed to just, hey, we're going to do the same thing we did last year and hope more people show up and click the link, which I think is an immediate way for them to be like, oh, we're not going to get our money's worth. Cool, we're out.
That makes a lot of sense. Bully, how do you is there anything you say about pricing yourself as like an amateur organization or like a tier two team? And is there any differences between the way you price Blue Otter League versus the Blue Otter teams?
A big thing about pricing is one, sometimes you just take whatever you can get at this point, but a lot of it counts with deliverables as well. If they're asking us to do a lot of stuff, which will take time, effort, like let's say they asked us to run a tournament for them. I'm now looking at how much work I have to do for that. So I'm taking my time, maybe my staff's time, etc. And I'm have to add that kind of calculation into how much this kind of sponsorship would be worth. Um, so for Blue Water League specifically, um, it depends if they want, be on streams, wants us to make posts. If they want us to capture, like, have conversions on a product or whatever, then one, they usually do it per conversion or if you hit the rates. And I don't typically like to do that, especially if I um, don't think we're gonna even hit it, or if it's a major paid service, I will just say no to sponsorship. Like for example, one sponsorship was like $30 a month, and I knew my player base wouldn't do it, so I was like, no, because one, it's not worth it for the sponsor. Two, it would make us look really bad. So it's just sometimes you just gotta take whatever you can get in reasonable time and effort. If you know that something can be a good match, go for it. You could be a little bit more lenient on your pricing. If something's not a good match, then I'd say just don't take it, because it just affects your future overall ability to produce for other sponsors.
Yeah, I think I want to go into what do you guys think makes a good sponsor? We talked about like how you guys can help them. What do you guys think makes a good sponsor for you outside of money?
I would just say collaboration. Like I think a lot of sponsors, especially the more corporate ones, fall into the category of like they have an idea of what they want from all the partnership opportunities that they're pursuing. And so it becomes your job as like a kind of as a company in general to just kind of service the request. And that makes it feel a little worse because you're kind of leaving a lot of your kind of latent like expertise on the table. So I think the best brands are the ones who are like excited, motivated, want to get into the space, and they're like, what do you think would be cool for our fans? Or what do you think would be a cool way to position our brand in this space? And I think uh, anytime you have that is a immediate home run because your creative folks can kind of run wild with it. Your partnership team can kind of carve out a bunch of cool, unique opportunities in the deal that would make sense and potentially give you extra revenue, if it works out. And then it just makes it easier in general to kind of get them on the line because they're just motivated to be involved, and whatever value you can give them is just a value add on top. But that's very much like the unicorn of it all, I think.
That's fair. Is there anything from the Blue Otter side that you should say would make a good sponsorship for you guys?
Yeah, if they want it, the minute that you talk to them and they seem excited, it just automatically feels like a match that's going to happen. You don't want to have a sponsorship conversation where they're just like kind of not into it. The minute that happens, there's a good chance that they don't want to sponsor you. Um, that's like the first tell if the sponsorship is going to work out or not. And another thing is if they do give us creative, um, I guess, power of doing whatever the sponsor we think is best for the sponsor, then we can incorporate it how we like. But sometimes when they require you to do certain things, and I don't, I don't want to bring them into this, so I'm not going to say the name. There's an organization that has like kind of like a partnership thing where one of their posts looked like it looked botted because they required them to say something good about a company under their post on replies for a sponsor, and I immediately thought it was all bots, and I realized it wasn't. It was part of their like partner program, and that just looks it put me off. And I
Yeah.
understand for the people that participated, they get free stuff out of it, so it's cool for them. But on the outside looking in, it didn't look that good. So I think at that point, you want them to have a little more creative power, so they aren't forced to do that. They could say exactly like in their own form how they want to like reply, but not something very specific that looks repetitive.
Yeah, that reminds me of what Raid Shadow Legends did in the creative sphere a few years ago, where it was like everyone had to comment on like the posts and whatnot, and it was all like the same cookie cutter response. We have a question from one of our viewers for you guys regarding student opportunities when it comes to stuff like this. When it comes to like student led teams or like collegiate esports teams, stuff like that, when they do you guys ever have it where collegiate esports team will reach out to you guys for like a sponsorship or for a partnership? And if you do, what are some of the like yeses and nos you give to those teams on like why you would partnership with like a collegiate team or why you wouldn't?
Yeah, I think on the tier one side, I think it's very different than what it's like in tier two, especially with kind of Blue Water having a lot of tournament operations stuff that they do on the side. There's maybe a little more overlap, but I think on the tier one side, it's kind of like the companies that are like business to business versus like business to consumer, where I think there's just not a good interface there, where it's like we're not offering a service to to the college student or the players at the college, and vice versa. They're not really offering anything to us, right? Like if there's a fan of Dignitas and we partner with a college, what is the fan of Dignitas supposed to do to support the college other than enroll at the college, right? So
Yeah,
it's very difficult where there's not always like that necessarily overlap. I think there's opportunities for us to do things to help each other for sure, and that is a lot of like the development opportunities for players, for those with like esports programs, and there's a lot of like speaking opportunities and networking and that kind of stuff. But I think from like a pure like business context, at least for tier one esports teams, it can be really tricky unless you have like a really strong idea of something to do with the college in particular.
that makes a lot of sense. Anything in the tier two realm of these leagues? Do you guys ever have collegiate teams reach out to you guys? And like how do you look at a partnership there, Bully?
Yeah, so a big thing about tier two is like you do see a lot of colleges partnering, especially like NACL. You see like, Citadel and Ole Miss partnering for NACL, and then they also partnered with Eastern Michigan for something else, if I'm not mistaken. But a big thing is, yeah, those are student-led organizations, but it's going to be mostly like mentoring at that point, right? We're just going to talk to them, maybe have some meetings, maybe speak at one of their esports like meetings or gatherings. Uh, and maybe even if they're like a very prominent school, they're good at a certain game, like maybe pick up some of their players and things like that. But in terms of like any monetary partnerships, that's probably not going to happen. So it's going to be solely based on like helping out the scene for us.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I think people would expect out of like a collegiate partnership with an organization. I got one more question for you guys before we start doing some goodbyes, and that's where do you think the future of esports monetization is moving? And is there any areas that you guys are hoping to see it go for both your organizations and your teams?
I'll let Bully go first on this one because it's a can of worms for sure.
An easy question to the end. It could be a topic on its own, but
So it's difficult, right? The way esports ran for the last ever um, was mainly source of from sponsorships, and with the sponsorship, well, kind of becoming dry, and the scene is getting kind of rough. One, you're trying to weather the storm, and hopefully, companies start going back into esports, or there's like a new way of marketing esports where it attracts companies. Um, But until then, I think it's going to rely on sponsorships for now. And then maybe in the future, if teams are able to kind of sell themselves to their fans to maybe like be part of a club for X amount of money, kind of like a subscription service, I think that might go a long way. Yes, it's not going to be a lot of money, but at that point, any money is something.
That makes a lot of sense. What about you, Jonathan? Where do you foresee this moving into?
Yeah, I think long term, I think there's a very large specter looming over everything, which is the fans have had it too good for too long of just kind of getting a lot for free, and I think eventually the time will come to pay the piper where we'll be back to the old school days of if you want to watch tier 2 or tier 1 Korean League of Legends, you had to subscribe to OGN on Twitch to get the 720p feed instead of being stuck on 480. So translate that to the modern world, you're probably gonna have to start paying to watch some of this stuff, or there's going to be more things behind paywalls. I know some teams are actually putting their own content behind paywalls, or for like a kind of pay us to watch it early. So a lot of like the Patreon style approaches are coming. Just ways to like monetize kind of mobilized fan base is becoming like the new way to go, because you kind of have to meet them where they're at instead of relying on another entity. I'd love for it to not be that way. I'd love for us to all be free, and we just NASCAR it up and just slap stickers of brands on everything and have that pay for everyone's salaries and accommodations and stuff. But the reality is it's a much harder value prop to kind of deliver for those brands. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's
what are you gonna
tough.
do with what are you gonna do with co-streamers then if like they can't watch tier 1 league?
That's what I mean, right? Like I think another layer to it as well is like, should the co-streamers be paying a license or not? Should they be more integrated into the way the broadcast is produced? Should there be like a producer that helps to run the top co-streamers in games where the top co-streamer dominates the category, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of kind of un really kind of treaded land to go through to like
Mm-hmm.
figure out like where should we draw these battle lines to make all of this make sense and make it
Yeah.
like a long term thing that makes sense.
Out of curiosity, we just got a question in chat. Do you guys have time for one more question before I send this away? Is that like work with both your
Yeah.
schedules?
Yeah, I can do it.
Awesome. So Swag Studio asks, what would your feedback to an upcoming organization looking to secure their first ever sponsorship? Um, sorry, I'm trying to read this and like recap it really quick. Um, okay, yeah. Should I be concerned, or is it kind of traditional expected in the beginning to have volunteer work when starting up an organization? And how would you go about securing your first ever sponsorship?
Yeah, it's
I,
it's it's really tough at the beginning. I think you likely will have to have some volunteer experience, but I think the important thing is to just be honest with folks and make sure they understand that. And then once you have some proof of concept or product that can potentially make sense for a sponsor, give a like non-cold call like approach, like show up with an idea of how their brand uniquely works, and be ready to be told no a lot, because you probably will have to hear a lot of no's before you even hear like a let's talk. You're gonna get a lot of just responses of no.
yeah. Just straight up, basically, besides like the producers and casters for Blue Otter, uh, everyone else is volunteer, and even the producers and casters are basically volunteer. They just get some like Taco Bell box money. Um, so I think when you're starting with an organization, you just look for people who are passionate in the scene that's trying to also build up their brand. So they might be looking for work to put on their resume to maybe, potentially go into a tier 1 organization at some point. So you have a lot of people that are, collegiate students that just want to do it for fun or do it for the experience. Um, and yeah, like at, at some point, like, it, it honestly makes you feel bad. Like you wish you could, give them something, but at the end of the day, if your org is not doing like well financially, it's in your best interest to keep it volunteer and just be upfront with them. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be completely okay with it and want to be part of something bigger and like want to help build up the org.
Also, not to like also kind of further this, but like when it comes to production, from what I've seen from a lot of small leagues, is they'll have a weaker production of like a lot of volunteers early on, and they use money. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bully, but they'll use money they get over time to try and build that foundation for stronger production teams. A lot of the time, it is very much just like volunteer producers running like an OBS with like cheap overlays, or like people like inside the organization will like make the overlays very early
Uh,
on before they go into
yeah,
higher
so
productions.
when we first started, it was actually me casting with the other owner. So
Yeah, I would say
it's like
Titan reached out to players to not to bring up
yeah,
Titan, but like Titan, another amateur
yeah,
organization. They reached out to players. That's how I got in the casting game. I got reached out to, and they're like, "Hey, another team in your org's playing. Do you want to cast the game for us?" And that's how like a lot of the early amateur orgs, at least in the league space, did it.
yeah. It's because you don't want to be like one. We started out as a free entry league, so we didn't have any entry fees because back then it was not mainstream to charge any entry fees, and that was kind of the problem with the tournaments back then. Because if you started charging an entry fee, the players are just going to go to a different tournament. So either all the tournaments have to get on board with starting charging a fee, and honestly, the fees are not bad at all for a team for let's say Emerald rank. You're paying $75 for the entire season, which can last 3 months. And if you compare that to any recreational league like softball, um, that's literally like 1/10 the price that you're paying. So a lot of this time and effort that the people are putting in for like the TOs, uh, they're not getting any return on their investment because the entry fees are still too low, in my opinion.
Totally fair. And I hope that answers your question, Swag. With that, we're going to go ahead and conclude the panel. If you tuned in late, this panel will be uploaded afterwards for anyone to watch back the VOD. And I just want to thank both of you guys, Jonathan, McDaniel. Thank you so much. And I guess, is there anything you want to plug or anything last notes you want to say before we send it away, Jonathan? Is there any like final message you have?
No, just watch the LCS, watch the Dignitas teams across all of our different games that we're in, follow our socials, the usual brand plugs.
Also, Jonathan's Twitter can be found in the chat. So go ahead, go follow him over on, I guess, X. I hate that it's X now.
I'm calling it
follow
Twitter
him
till I
over.
die.
Yeah.
Follow him over on Twitter. And Bully, go ahead and do the same. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to you and Blue Otter League for all the information. I can attest Blue Otter is an amazing league to both work for and play in. But yeah, Bully, is there any final notes you want to say? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, go follow Blue Water. I mean, if you want to play in the tournament, feel free to reach out to one of us. We'll try to get you situated. And we're actually streaming right now. If anyone wants to go watch the league on Blue Water League on Twitch.
And with that, we got one last thing to sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, our sponsorships, after talking with them all day, for the Canadian Intercollegiate Exhibition. We've got two sponsorships to thank. The first one's going to be BMO and BMO Next Level to help you focus on what's important. BMO has checking and saving accounts, credit cards, and borrowing options specifically designed for students. Open a BMO student account and get up to $950 in value, including a $175 cash with BMO's current student offers. Visit bmo.com/students for details. You can also put !BMO in the chat. There's also BMO Next Level, which is a first of its kind program dedicated to helping gamers level up in game and in real life. Run by Sean Frame, BMO's gaming relations specialist. Sean brings a commitment to helping viewers achieve their financial goals and has a passion for gaming as an active member of the gaming community. Type !BMO Next Level for more details if you want to learn how to save money to buy new gear and League of Legends skins. We also have One of Zero. You can use !One of Zero in the chat for One of Zero, which has supplied CIE with 6 gaming mice that can make you better at what you do. Type !Raffle in the chat for a chance to win one of 6 gaming mice supplied by One of Zero. Code like a maniac, design like a guru, and game like an assassin. Take pride in your setup and look good while you achieve it. Discover your inspiration, defy definition. Be One of Zero. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again so much for tuning into the panel. And thank you again, Jonathan and Bully, for being here and helping us get all this information to our lovely viewers. And with that, we're going to go ahead and send it away. In, I believe, a couple hours' time, it is going to be the Overwatch Finals. So tune in at 7 p.m. for the Overwatch Finals at the Canadian Intercollegiate Exhibition.